and welcome to the Forward Unto Dawn podcast, the show about the lore and universe of the Halo franchise. This is episode number 51. I'm David, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Dani.
Hidely hodly.
And our guest this week is Channing, who I'll let introduce herself.
That is not what I was told. I'm Channing. I am David's live-in girlfriend. I teach first grade at an elementary school, and I have some thoughts about phonics in the Halo universe.
The most pressing thing is, what is your experience with the Halo universe before reading this book?
Oh, yeah. My brother traded in his GameCube for an Xbox around 2001 solely for the Halo video game. His Halo game name was Fighting Squirrel. And I watched him play while I read books. And then sometimes he would put me on the headset and I would talk to people pretending to play while he played. Much better than I could ever. And that is the extent of, I think the last Halo game I heard of was Halo 3. And that was the last of it in our household.
So non-traditional co-op by the sounds of it?
I think over here they just call that catfishing. But
using my tiny, tinny voice so people would be easier on me so my brother could score more easily. That's usually how that went.
I was back in the day with proximity chat, wasn't it? So people would actually gather around you. They'd identify, oh crap, there's someone there, get them. Yeah.
Well, we have gathered to talk about Halo Outcasts, which in retrospect is perhaps one of the worst Halo novels to introduce someone who has only played the game by a proximity chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the book you chose they bring someone in on? That's unconventional.
Yeah, it was a choice. It was a bad choice in retrospect, but I didn't know that at the time. This does, so this was written by Troy Denning, was released after a bunch of delays in August 2023. My thinking was, as much as I had a thought, this is sort of kind of a sequel to Halo Silent Storm and Halo Oblivion, which very much were, hey, are you interested in Halo? Here's this Master Chief guy. We're going to introduce you to the universe. This does not really follow it as much as I thought, and it is not very noob friendly.
I will say the timing of the book release was also terrible because it came out the day I started the school year back again, and that's notoriously a very busy time in my life. So on the one hand, lesson planning for 6 lessons a day, and I didn't get the time I wanted to really research the things I was reading. By the end of it, I was just like, I'm sure David will tell me about this in the podcast.
Jesus. Wow, David, sounds like you'd be a really bad choice then.
Yes, and it was. I admit this. So yeah, like I said, this is sort of a follow-up to Silent Storm and Oblivion. It also ties into, it's got characters from the 2015 novel, Halo Hunters in the Dark. It's sort of, and in some ways, I think this actually is perhaps, since the Forerunner trilogy, the most tied into that book, because it deals with a lot, as we find out at the very end, with all the cosmic Forerunner precursor stuff.
I can't imagine the end of this book being comprehensible to anyone who doesn't have a very firm grip on the Forerunner stuff. Yeah. Those old books, like if you don't have a firm grip on that stuff, it's just going to sound like nonsense to you.
Well, and it kind of is nonsense. I haven't brought up the licking rock stuff from that book to further confuse her, but
thank you.
Yeah, so I guess start off overall thoughts, Dani.
To be honest, I didn't care for it, especially because considering it features one of the most fan supported characters with the Arbiter. I thought the actual main story was serviceable, to be fair. I think the ending has some interesting hooks, obviously, it'll tie in the future stuff, but it feels like this is yet another Halo novel that's there to fill in the blanks because they rushed the main story in the main Halo game and left a very wide open hole, or 15, in the story, and this is one of the products they're shoving out basically fill those holes to shut people up in the meantime.
You know what? I
Unfortunately.
really agree with you on that, Danny. As someone who has none of that context, I read it as like almost a soap opera episode where there was a ton of exposition in the beginning, which I did appreciate. And then like the main story was in the middle. And then at the end, it was sort of foreshadowing for something to come next that I wasn't quite grasping, but I understood where the story is going. It reminded me of a soap opera or a manga book that has like 120 serial novels in it. I felt like the story itself could have probably been written in 100 pages.
Yeah, it does. It does pick up at the end, but there is sort of like the Silent Storm in Oblivion. Denning likes doing a lot of. There's a bunch of characters, and they're all at cross purposes, and they don't know what's going on as much as some other characters, and they're sort of figuring out what everyone knows. I don't think it works as well here as it did in those books, partially because some of the characters aren't really involved. Like Atriox shows up, but he's only, I think, given like 2 perspective chapters, and he's here.
So how would that not be confusing if you haven't read a million other books and played a million other games? Like if you're just going into this sounds wildly bad.
I also had to just give them a bunch of nicknames because I couldn't keep it straight in my head who was whom. So the Sangheili became the Spaghettios. Or sorry, the Spaghetti. Sangheilios is Spaghettios. The Arbiter is Van Dam. The voice of the gods for the weapon was like Dr. Kevorkian. I don't know if you understand that reference. I'll let you explain, David.
I don't know that one.
Kevorkian, isn't he the one who Dr. Death?
Oh yeah. Okay, it's a serial killer thing.
That's a musical thing I didn't pay attention to.
Yeah. So it's not it pays off a lot of stuff, but maybe there's not enough real plot, I think, to scaffold it together. I think also there's a surprisingly very little character time here, because our main characters are Vale, which Channing will have some thoughts on, and the Arbiter. And the Arbiter sort of gets, I think he's an interesting perspective because he's a friend of humanity, but he obviously puts the spaghetti, as it were, first. And they have a different approach to honor and what killing people and stuff. So he's got at least an interesting perspective. Vale, mostly, she has a little bit, there's a line really late in the book about how she regrets, like she thinks her haste in running this operation cost all these people's lives, but there's not any follow-up on that, or they don't talk about it.
She's also only 23.
Yes,
If 23-year-olds have a lot of pressure, okay, they can yeah.
I guess, yes, Channing had many questions about the chronology of this, and I guess I hadn't realized that Vale, especially since I showed her a picture of the character in Halo 5 Gardens where she first really appears. She doesn't look like she's a college student, basically, and she has all these qualifications and stuff, and Channing didn't buy any of it.
Really?
No, so okay, my background is anthropology, and I understand where they're going. Like, she's this wonderkind genius, one of a kind. That's how she got selected, I guess, super young to be a Spartan. I don't know, like the first generation were 5 or 6 when they were chosen, but I don't know.
Let's not get into that. That if we have to explain that, that's a.
Well, apparently her dad was a Spartan. That was a throwaway line in the beginning. I thought was going to be a lot more important than it turned out being. But that's, again, where I feel like it's soap opera. Like, that's a line that's going to come up later, probably, in another book. But the whole point of anthropology is, like, you can't just know everything right away, right? Like, when you write an ethnography, you're observing and you're putting your own perspective into your observation. And I think the average ethnography takes at least 2 years to write because of all the observations and then trying to translate that through your own perspective versus the perspective of the people who live it. It's not something you rush through or just know or can get your master's in 6 months. It's very, even if you are brilliant, you can't rush time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I don't buy the whole Wonder Kid thing.
I will defer to your expertise I'll defer to your expertise in this because I wouldn't have a clue about any of that sort of stuff. So if you're saying that's then I'm willing to believe it. Like absolutely.
And then I found a arbiter. I don't know. Does he really do that much? Like he observes a lot, but it felt very thin man. Like he was just sort of observing everything that was going on, and then at the very end, he had the answers.
Yeah, he's not. Stuff sort of happens through a lot of this, and it kind of would have happened without some of the characters being there. They aren't super active
or necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely, I did feel from the economy of characters standpoint, and especially if you're a new person, throwing a bunch of names at you and not knowing which ones are relevant. Like the ODSTs in this are irrelevant. Like you don't need to know their names. It's really Vale, the Arbiter,
the Oath Keeper.
Yeah, the Oath Warden, Kriyayumu, or somewhere. What did you call him?
Aye, Captain.
Aye, Captain. Yeah, like they briefly mention at the beginning.
Who do you think hired the Oath Warden? I feel like that's something that is very obvious to someone who's read the Halo novels, but as someone who hasn't yet, like I was just like, all right.
They outline that it's Atriox at the end, but it's through an intermediary. Yeah, they at the beginning they mention Nethrozome and Uze Taham, which are characters from Halo 3. They were like you could when you were palling around in co-op. They were characters.
The co-op guys, yeah, the co-op buddies. Yay!
But they disappear almost immediately, and that's another two names that
were
not relevant, really. Yeah, so I definitely was felt with the feeling of, well, this wrapped up a bunch of stuff, and it set seeds for where they're going to go, but it wasn't as a story on its own. I don't know if it was super enjoyable.
It was a science fiction novel. I don't know. I felt it was a little bit uninspired in the sci-fi part of it. A lot of it felt very rooted in human culture, even alien behaviors.
Yes.
Oof. I'm liking this take. This is a good take, David. What the hell?
Well, no. So the female Kaigon, like she gets a lot of sexism because females aren't supposed to be Kaigon. I'm like, really? Do we have to have that struggle in like a foreign society as well, where women aren't allowed to lead because of whatever, like that's just so rooted in humanity.
To be fair, they did shortcut it and just copy and paste a lot of Japanese tropes, Japanese cultural tropes.
I was trying to explain that, like, well, they had another author come up with the Sangheili culture, and it was basically Space Samurai, and they've kind of slowly walked that back.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I mean, it's not a knock against Troy Dennings, because clearly he's just working with what he has. It's just the whole idea that it could be more, science fiction could be so much more than what it often is, which is probably why I'm new to it now. I'm a fantasy nerd where, you have Tolkien, who really did painstakingly create languages and cultures and ideas beyond.
Can I just say, as a sci-fi reader, I love Troy Dennings. Like, he is a staple of sci-fi. He's written for a lot of different IPs, and he's really solid. My criticisms of the book here in particular don't extend to the criticisms of the author. The author did a serviceable job, if not an outstanding job, given the prerogative, essentially. I don't think he had the best challenge to overcome here with this book. And I don't think it's the best use of the author in getting him to write stories like these, if that makes sense.
Where do you think he would really blossom then, under the Halo umbrella?
Yeah, which would you say is the good?
Big giant space fights, space battles, little starships flying every there and there and then, and some kind of climactic battle happening on planet, on foot at the same time. Like, the guy writes good, fast-paced, action-packed, dense sci-fi, and there's none of that really here. So it doesn't really take advantage of his strengths.
There's not really. All the things explode in orbit, and there's a bunch of smaller skirmishes, but then the big climactic battles get averted.
Do you think he was pushed to put in all the exposition then? Is that a staple in the Halo novels, or do you think he just sort of got bogged down by it?
I think there's a certain level of exposition that everyone includes in their novels when it comes to Halo. Like they always have to have something in there for someone who hasn't read a few books in a wee while, you know what I mean, or just played some games and want to have an easy ramp in. So I think all the books are kind of written with that kind of in mind, where your reader could be someone who's played the game yesterday or played it 5 years ago, but they have played it. Like they assume that you have some knowledge of the universe of Master Chief and the sort of surrounding sort of idea of the universe.
I do know John 3:16.
Oh yes, John 3:16, absolutely.
117.
Oh.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just skim through what happens, comment wherever relevant. So it takes place shortly before Halo Infinite, November 2559. It starts off on Sangheili, Spaghettios. And I do appreciate one thing that this was sort of the same thing with Shadows of Reach, which came out before Infinite. I do appreciate that they do a good job of setting up for the not probably lost on people who have not read a bunch of Halo novels or stuff, but I feel like they do a good job of setting up the Cortana running around controlling everything period as substantially different, because that's always a looming threat throughout the book, that they're under the gun, they can't do too much, they're afraid they're gonna to bring her down upon them.
But the whole threat of Cortana throughout this novel just served to remind me of how much of a job the games did in resolving that issue, and basically by not resolving it, basically saying it happened off screen, it all got fixed, don't worry, it's different now. It was a painful reminder, because I thought at least that was the one stake from Halo 5 that was taken away, as another, here's a stake, like here's a proper game changer. And the fact that Halo Infinite didn't fall through with it is something that I think every Halo novel, almost every Halo novel being published subsequently, has to deal with. And I think this book not dealing with it, but going back into a time period where you did feel that change up in the whole greater meta, essentially, of the Halo universe. It just reminds me of how badly they handled it, essentially.
Also not helping if you're new to that is there a bunch of stuff in this, because it's from different perspectives. You get like 4 or 5 names sometimes for the same thing. Like you get Cortana, she's also the tyrant to the Sangheili, she's the apparition to the banished. It's
I bet you that wasn't confusing at all. I bet you no one got confused at all at any stage.
Yeah, so we start out on Sanghelios, where all the Cortana's forces are jumpy. They're kind of doing like a police state thing where you got to go to checkpoints, and I assume the robots were speaking in German accents when they asked for their papers.
Yeah, what is the significance of the Arbiter and the Kygons getting their weapons stripped from them?
So the whole thing that they kind of explain, but the full thing that is not explained, is that the Forerunners had this mantle of responsibility that since they were the most advanced guys, they got to decide what was best for everyone. And then they got wiped out, mostly gone. And humans were, to some of them, going to have the same, they were going to assume the mantle. But then Cortana, who is a human AI, through various stuff, ended up deciding that AIs were the people who should run the world, because they have indefinite lifespans and could plan and do everything so much better than organic life, and so they were going to enforce peace throughout the galaxy. And so that's why they're sort of running around and preventing people from fighting and blowing up planets if they don't get in line.
Okay.
You played Halo 5, it made all the sense.
Yeah.
Is that sarcasm?
Yes,
okay.
Unfortunately. Yes.
I do think, because it's one of those things they've gone back and forth on implying what the character is, because in Halo 4, she's suffering from basically mental illness, like a dementia brought on by her lifespan, and then she's saved in Halo 5. And it seems clear the original intent was that she's not evil. She's just misguided. She's decided she's now at odds with our heroes. And since then, they seem to have just walked it back and decided that, well, she was kind of falling apart when she went into this foreigner repository that saved her. So she's just crazy, which I find a little more disappointing or less interesting.
Well, but they have brought back a more naive, younger version of her. That's what everyone wants, right? A more naive, younger version. Yeah.
So it's a little. I mean, I suppose like with this, you can just say, well, that's the Arbiter's understanding of it, not the canonical truth. But it does feel like because people reacted so badly to Cortana being evil, quote unquote, they decided to just say, well, she was a crazy version, not the real one. And yes, we've replaced her with a new version.
Okay, so this is a soap opera. Like the Halo universe is a soap opera.
Yes, it's a really bad one, like on a TV soap.
Yeah.
It's that bad. It's really that bad at this point. Yes, I agree.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying like there's outlandish explanations for things to keep it going rather than having to truly walk back something.
Whenever you get to the point of oversaturation with Halo has, like there's so many books, there's so many games. Yeah, you can't not.
Yeah, and they've barely retconned stuff, which is good in one way, but it also makes it tougher to fit things. So
they did try to separate canon once with the TV show by saying it's a separate canon, so everything that happens there doesn't count or influence anything else.
Yeah, otherwise, it's canon for better or worse. So yeah, the Arbiter's kind of chafing under this, but I do appreciate here because in the Kilo 5 trilogy, they spend a lot of time having the humans pull the wool over the Arbiter's eyes and be dicks. And it turns out that, at least at this point, the Arbiter knows all about that. And he's sort of stuck in this place where he's trying to unite all the Sangheili, but they're all bitter. Some people just want, like, okay, well, Cortana's going to run things. Let's do that. He doesn't want that to happen. If he can't really rely on human assistance because that'll make him look weak and he'll get challenged. He's afraid there's going to be another coup. Oh yeah, I forgot another name. Cortana's the Archon to the Arbiters. So that's an extra name. So at least 4 going on in this.
4 names. Yeah. 4 names. Okay, it's keeping it straight. Okay.
But then we get our.
That's the most realistic thing, though. Like different cultures will call something different names. So that really didn't confuse me that much. That I understood.
Okay. Just confusing to me.
Why the Spaghetti would call like a human ship an owl when they have no context for what owls are. That confused me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get into the discussion about how many names Master Chief has had over the whole run so far.
Yeah, so we get the Oath Warden shows up at Vadam Keep, and the Oath Wardens are bounty hunters, which was a new little touch. They're the usual, they're slimy and dishonorable because we punch and fight people in their face, like demanded. And he sets up basically what the issue is that there's a human on Sanghelios, who's been financed by his shadowy client who we don't know about, and she's supposed to go to this planet, Netherop, which is what we already know from Silent Storm and Oblivion as a setting, this wasteland where there's this ancient civilization's ruins. And they learn that basically there's something on the planet that might be able to destroy one of Cortana's giant enforcer machines, a Guardian. So everyone is obviously interested. And the Arbiter is afraid that either his rivals will get the knowledge and then he'll be overthrown in a coup, or the humans in the Office of Naval Intelligence will get it. And considering that they were busy trying to come up with a way of genociding him through defeating genetic alteration of the crops and stuff, he knows that's not a good thing. So he basically bugs out with all his buddies, and leaving Vale behind, Spartan Vale, who's been hanging around there too. And she's afraid that the Arbiter will learn about what Oni did, even though he already seems like he knows. And here we get a lot about Vale's background that we sort of knew from supplementary materials and Hunters in the Dark, but it's more detailed, including the fact that her dad, theoretically, they don't entirely confirm it, but it basically sounds like he faked his death and ran because he was a possible selection for the Spartan 2 project.
To be fair, you would run too.
Yeah.
You would run too, would you not?
There's another character who's got a secret Spartan dad, but that's not this one.
Okay.
Yeah, but they use through the dead drop of a like a little dating, like a Sangheili dating app kind of thing. She gets sent to a little rendezvous with the other human, the biologist or xenoarchaeologist, Keely, who explains her backstory, and she wants Vale's help because she realizes the person who paid her is bad news, and so she wants to get there first and give him the slip.
Does this negate in any way the drinking of the marrow she did, or is that... Because it seemed to be, at least to this Sangheili, a big deal that she drank, and to Vale, because Vale is an anthropologist and understands this kind of stuff. It is a big deal that Keely drank the marrow with the person who, or not, with the entity who hired her in the first place, which feels like a sealing blood pact type thing. One, does Keely understand how dire her situation is? Is there any repercussion if she got found out? Is this a loophole that's viable?
I don't think the sucking of the marrow thing ever came up before now, so I'm not sure.
I have never heard of sucking the marrow being in anything related to anything. Maybe I just haven't read the right book, but I have no idea. Weird, but okay.
Yeah.
It was just mentioned a couple times, like, oh, Keely really messed up by agreeing to the terms of this this
marrow
excavation by drinking marrow at the end of it. As like I took it to be like a blood pact, or even, I don't know, in Harry Potter, the secret keeper, where if you tell their secret, you just die on impact.
Yeah, I think she's just supposed to be the there's a proud sci-fi tradition of your daring archaeologist-ish person who just screws the rules. I think that's just what she's supposed to be doing. I don't think they
It could just be foreshadowing of what bad might happen.
just give it the MacGuffin feel.
If I learned anything from reading this book, I have really, really bad instincts about what's going to be important in the books, and like everything I got hung up on just went away after a couple of chapters.
Yeah, including they decide they need to, in classic, we need to assemble a crew. Vale and Keely, last name Ayushka, head to Gao, which is a planet that came up in a bunch of Troy Denning's other books. And they're just there to pick up Rosa Fuertes, who had been on Netherop previously. She was one of the stranded little kids who had been saved by the Master Chief in the previous book. And they think they need her knowledge, and they make a deal.
What illness does Rosa have again?
They say she's got some sort of like brain prion disease. They just kind of have to come up with something random because they've already established that cancer isn't really a thing in the Halo universe. You can solve it really easily.
Oh.
Yeah, sci-fi disease, essentially.
There was a fun Easter egg at the beginning of an early chapter, the Pipestral VTOL. That is a real plane. The Pipestral is a real like fighter airplane thing, drone, whatever, that is coming out this year. When I was Googling it to see if it were a Halo thing or a real thing, it turns out it's a little bit of both.
So there, if you have to Google every proper name in a Halo book, you do learn things.
Yes.
Yeah, I fully believe that. That sounds like something they would do. Read from real life as much as they can. But...
Although I also don't know if the Halo universe has hit like Star Trek already ran into a problem where they go back in time so often.
Reality versus fiction.
Yeah,
dates.
that we like
Yeah.
should be, at least half the world should be currently under the reign of superhuman warlords who are genetically engineered. But then whenever Star Trek goes back in time, it just looks like the time period they jump back to.
I was going to say I'm really looking forward to Irish reunification very soon.
Oh yeah,
Living
it's,
in Ireland and
like
all, and
2 years or something.
Star Trek. Yeah, Star Trek says it's going to happen very soon. That sounds wonderful.
But they did say it was due to terrorism, so maybe less wonderful.
Damn it.
Yeah, so I don't think there's, so I guess the VTOL can exist fine because it's like another 150 years before like communists are fighting fascists on Mars or something. And so everyone heads to Netherop, where Atriox and the Banished are hiding. And it's at that point you're like, all right, well, presumably this is the shadowy figure she doesn't want to get, because if you're a Halo fan, you know Atriox is now the big bad for everything.
I didn't know that.
Yes. The knowledge you did not have.
What do you think of Atriox in the novel? If you didn't know he was the big bad, like, what was your thoughts on this character of Atriox then, from how the novel presents him?
Who is that? That was my anytime he appeared, I was just like, who are we talking about again?
Yeah, he's, like you said, he's basically got like 2 chapters. He disappears for large swaths of the book until the very end. But yeah, like I still appreciate that they spend a lot of time talking about, like, they're trying to do all these feints to prevent Cortana from learning what they're up to. And they've got a timeline. Well, there's only so long we can possibly avoid her. But we're going to forget about talking about Atriox for like half the book, because the Arbiter's forces arrive on the planet, and they discover, when they land, they find out some humans are stealing their ghosts. And as the Arbiter continues doing through this, he decides he's going to talk with everyone first before he kills them, which I think is very respectful of him. And the humans are Petrov and the UNSC forces who got left behind, marooned. In the previous book, they've basically been fighting the Covenant who got left behind. There's still more of them because they had ladies and have reproduced. And they talk about how Petrov is like the mom and the commander of these things. It's weird.
Yeah, they also didn't really clear up like how many women there were. Was incest a thing in it? Like,
there were 5 women.
Okay.
I do not know.
How many
God,
men?
you did the numbers. You did the numbers. Damn it.
I think it works fine for the first generation. Beyond that, it gets dicey really quickly. I'm not sure if they had to like drop a flow chart. It's not dwelled upon, probably for the best.
Is this going to be like an arranged marriage society?
Yes. However that would come out, it would be unclear. But while they're talking, they basically have to run quickly, because what we find out is the weapon everyone's looking for activates, and it wipes out a bunch of reinforcements. There's a kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey thing where they have like these visions because they're like looking into an interdimensional rift. And it was that sort of like weird, inscrutable stuff that made me feel like this was hearkening back to the Foreigner trilogy, versus the more hard military sci-fi that the Halo books normally hew to. Yeah, but they all end up heading towards the Citadel, this tell, which...
Oh, is that what a tell is? Okay. Sorry,
I
I know
actually...
they explain that in the book, but then I just couldn't.
Yeah, but Petrov reveals the Citadels where the remaining Sangheili are, and they've been besieging them for decades, basically, and the Citadel has a weapon called the Claw, according to them. It gets, like, again, that gets 5 different names in this book, but the Claw is the easiest one to remember. And so basically all the characters we never met, but they get wiped out, so it's just Vale and a couple ODSTs and a few of the Sangheili. And so the rest is just a slow progression into the rest of the book. And the majority of it is just a slow progression into the Citadel. We catch up with the Sangheili inside, Nizar Kavarosi and Tam Lakosi, and there's just a few elites left. What did you call him? Carradine? Kevorkian.
Kevorkian.
Yeah, it's hard to explain how to pronounce that name. It's not a great one, even by elite standards. But he's pretty much nuts in a Khan Noonien Singh Wrath of Khan style. He's tenuously holding on to command, but everyone else is kind of, they're mostly just lazy because they don't have to fight him that often. And so that's why I haven't usurped. But they go out and attack Vale. They briefly capture the civilians, but that doesn't really go anywhere. The arbiters catch up. They palaver. There's a lot of throughout this entire section is a lot of, well, if you get there first, you can lay claim to it. We don't really want you to. The Oathkeeper has his own goals, and so the Kadons, who are allied with the Arbiter, are also trying to, they fight back, and they would rather kill off all the humans than let them get it. They end up deciding, Petrov suggests that the Arbiter's team make the effort to reclaim it because she's really hoping they all get killed off first. And we get, like, there's a lot of, basically inside the Citadel is magic nanite dust stuff that comes in hand. It like coats everything. They use it to create passages or sinkholes. It creates like a skin on the Sangheili that serves as armor. I liked it because it's just weird stuff. Like I guess it kind of relates to how the weapon works at the end, but it's mostly just weird sci-fi stuff that you haven't really seen. Sort of like how in the previous books, there's just weird mechanical coal-powered spiders that they crawl around in.
I mean, it's just the same stuff that healed Fortes and Legs, right? When they were being crushed. And there's that aside about, we do not exist. I know you don't exist. Do you want to exist? Like, I guess she was making the choice whether to become part of the dust or be healed.
Yeah, that's Fuertes gets cut off, and she, instead of dying, she's spoken to by this disembodied voice, who by the end you realize are basically some form of the primordial or the whatchamacallits?
Forerunners?
Precursors. Yeah, there we go. Precursors. But that comes at the end, and they realize at some point while they're working through the Citadel, like, that it doesn't make any sense that there's this super advanced technology in this city, which is definitely not super advanced. They decided the technology is precursor, not forerunner. And then the rest of this is basically just a series of fights and then talking and then fights again, because, and I didn't quite buy that the Covenant remaining wouldn't just try and kill them. I guess it's sort of desperation. But there's a lot of the Arbiter telling them the Covenant doesn't exist anymore. You can come back, and they say no. And then they retreat further back. One of Kevorkian's lieutenants, the Silent Storm, or the Silent Shadow character who was originally sent there to kill him, defects to the Arbiter at some point, because he, unlike all the other ones, wants to get off the planet. And so they end up just Tam Lakosi and Kavrosi are left. They all head into the Sanctum. They find that the Sangheili fleet in orbit is under attack, and so the Arbiter takes control of the weapon, the Claw, or the Divine Hand, as they call it. He realizes the Banished are there, and they use the weapon to destroy the Banished and Forerunner ships and temporarily save their fleet, but they realize that Cortana is now going to be coming, and that Atriox has sent a bunch of troops down to land to capture it. And they realize, oh, well, this entire thing probably destroyed Netherop when it was used, so they can't, it's not really a weapon they can use to take with it. They're going to originally just, all right, well, we'll agree to joint custody so Oni doesn't get control of it. But they decide it's better ultimately to just give it to Atriox, with the reasoning that he won't be able to use it, or if he uses it, he'll harm himself, which seemed like a really bad decision that everyone goes along with.
Why? Because
they make a lot of the the xenoarchaeologist saying, well, I've only studied this for 5 minutes, but I think it's unlikely they can do anything with this. And I think that they would have to only do it on their own planet. They couldn't launch it on a enemy planet, so there's no chance it would blow back on us.
Well, do you think this just goes more to the point of Dani saying this is more episodic, where they're trying to find a way to bring down Cortana, and this was just a filler book of like, oh, we could do this, but no, it actually won't work, and so they're just trying to wrap up why it won't work quickly?
Maybe. Well, so before this, they had a similar thing where they go back to the ruined Covenant world or human world of Reach. For a similar, like, we need to find something to stop Cortana, which turns out to be cloned brains that can be used to make an AI like Cortana, and that factors into Halo Infinite. This, I think the implication, I don't know if you agree, Dani, is that the Banished did get the weapon to work, and that's why there's the destroyed Guardian, and that's how they managed to capture Zeta Halo and Halo Infinite. Is that they do manage
absolutely.
to work it.
There's implications here that the Banished got their hands on something very powerful and then used that to their advantage later on. But it's not even spelled out. That's the problem. Like, it's implied, but it's not directly spelled out what the implications are from.
Mm-hmm.
Words are being spoken.
Yeah, so they have the. I do like that they have this. Well, we can't just give Atriox the weapon. We have to like come up with this fake thing where, oh, this person didn't obey me and she gave it to you accidentally instead, and this thing. And Atriox sees through the entire ploy, but he also totally misunderstands what they're planning. He thinks basically they just want to use him to destroy stuff and do their dirty work, and not that he thinks he's gonna kill himself in the process, which I liked. So basically, Atriox lets them go. Everyone gets off. All the human characters who were marooned leave. The two remaining Covenant decide to hang back, which leads to, I think, kind of the most dire ending for any characters in a Halo book, where once they left with the weapon, the Citadel basically loses power. All their food rots, and so the Lieutenant Mercy kills his crazy leader because he's dying from an infection anyway, and they're all going to die, presumably, and then either commits suicide or starves himself, which is pretty bleak.
Does that wrap into like the Kabuki thing of samurai? Honorable suicide?
I don't remember, honestly. They kind of go back and forth on the suicide being honorable or stuff. There's a lot more of like killing your lieutenants or whatever because they didn't do what you wanted or they challenged you, kind of thing. But it's a happy ending for all the human characters because they get off. Rosa, like I said, encounters the clearly precursor voices. She's miraculously healed of her incurable disease or whatever, and so she's fine, and she's forgiven by she's forgiven for basically sabotaging Petrov so that she could escape, and Petrov was marooned, which I had totally forgotten about until they brought it up, but it gets resolved in a paragraph, so it didn't matter. And then we get a final, in the book version, we get an adjunct, a little final piece, which is like given as basically some sort of like foreigner log or whatever, and we're back in the time post Halo activation, post reseeding, where the civilization that's on Netherop is clearly being steered by the voice people, aka the precursors, when the Guardian shows up. And I'm not entirely sure if the implication is that the precursors are gathering them at the Citadel so they will be protected from the destruction when they use against the Guardian, or they're gonna like basically get turned into fuel for the Citadel or something. They're obviously, the civilization died out, so at some point the precursors decided they weren't that interesting anymore. But I guess
that's not how I interpreted it. I interpreted it slightly different in terms of the precursors themselves coming back, like how the they survive the Halo ray being fired. And the fact that you see from the perspective of the report. What do you call the report? What do you call that group?
They called it a amelioration sweep log.
Yeah,
You need
but what do you call the group? There was a
oh
no.
the not the conclave the group of foreigners who hung back after everything went to hell to make sure things stayed orderly.
Yeah, this seems like this is a post Halo array being fired situation where they were scanning the galaxy, as they do, making sure it's all fine.
The
Turns out it wasn't
Criterion,
fine.
that's what it is.
Yeah, Criterion. There you go. Thank you. The Criterion basically decided, no shit, we better throw a massive weapon this way because it's a serious issue, which suggests that
Yeah.
the precursors have been here the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read Primordium, there's indications that they've always been here. The Forerunners never really wiped them out, just kind of pissed them off and made them do something different and exist differently. And I think that existing differently and how they escaped the firing of the Halo array is a big thing for them that we'll see play out and like, help explain maybe in 2 or 3 games or books time.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting. Like the bulk of the lore for a Halo fan is in that post novel sort of adjunct essentially, where we're getting indications that no, the precursors did survive. It seems pretty clear. They're echoing the Grave Mind and echoing the sort of stuff we've seen in Primordium.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's I think that's the big prize essentially. You put up the book to this point. Here's your little hints to the future. Sort of stuff we haven't figured out yet. Game might contradict it next year, but don't worry, it's very important right now.
And I guess the other implication of it is that they are back to their old tricks of steering civilizations and stuff. And I guess maybe the idea, because Halo Infinite introduces the Endless, which is a species that can survive the Halo array, and they're possibly the big bads.
Yes, they have something. There's definitely something going on with the Endless. Like there's indications that the precursors were walking around and conniving essentially with species. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Endless was one of these species that they connived with in some kind of way that pissed off the Forerunners in order to send a Guardian there to wipe them off the face of their planet instantly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is like nebulous sort of meta lore that they can literally just change next game, next book. If they decide this is not the direction we want to go in, we'll just completely 180 face it and go hard in a different direction, which kind of annoys me because they have done that now a number of times. But it kind of makes these sort of tantalizing glimpses into the deeper lore. It's kind of it makes it a bit dry in my mouth because I know that it can literally mean anything. It's open to interpretation on purpose, and it will change in future. Like whatever plans they are today, tomorrow might be completely different, and they'll just retcon, and that's how it's going to be. So I don't want to get excited, despite the fact that this is the most exciting part of the book for me as a long-term Halo fan. Like you don't talk about precursors without getting someone excited, essentially, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who gets to drive the narrative? Is it Microsoft, the Halo game creators, the Troy Dennings of the world, or the fans?
That is a fantastic question, and I would love to know the answer to that. As a fan, as someone who cares about this franchise and IP, I don't know
imagine
for sure
that Microsoft tells 343 what to do from a story basis, but how the story points get discussed and collaborated and decided upon and is unclear. Like there's not they also had a big like with a bunch of tech companies, there were all these layoffs last year, and 343 Industries the developers got hit, and basically all the main head honchos who were there when the company started are gone now. So it's unclear who, and like the main role got turned into 3 different roles, 3 separate positions. So it's kind of unclear who decides that now.
Okay.
They do have people who look after the books in particular. They do have people who look after different areas. But in terms of who's calling the shots, who's pulling the strings for the bigger picture, there's never a clear indication to the public of who that is, or what committee that is, or what body of folks at what particular organization is doing that. So it's never really clear to us.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it has to be because of the really complicated corporate structure that this franchise exists within, essentially.
Yeah.
Who decided to turn Halo the game into Halo a franchise, a universe, and then a storyline?
See, that's a really, really good question and debate as well, because before the first Halo game came out, there was a novelization of that game called The Flood. So the plans were in there from day one. There was a game and a book. Day one.
Yeah.
So
they
whether or not you can say what the plans were.
supposedly based on one person who was part of the franchise development group at Microsoft, he wanted to do it at they wanted to make it a franchise basically off the bat. And there's supposed to have been like some really bad blood where Bungie, the developers at the time, were really upset that they were going to like give Master Chief a backstory and stuff. And so they contracted out this guy, Eric Nyland, to write the book. But Bungie wanted them to cancel it, and basically they didn't cancel it because they were so far behind. They needed Microsoft writers to help them finish the game. And so they kind of like swapped and decided, okay.
What was Bungie's vision for Master Chief then? Just like a killing machine?
Yeah, they kind of wanted him to be sort of a cool Clint Eastwood kind of guy who barely talks.
Okay.
He actually gets less chatty as the games go on. In the first one, he's kind of quippy and sardonic, and then he just gets progressive. He talks less and less in the next ones until Halo 4.
But there is a game where he's very sad for a whole game. He's very, very sad. Even the camera focuses on him, he looks down, and the camera's looking at him. You feel he's sad. So there's a game where he's sad too.
So he could be just Bella Swan, but for sci-fi guys. You're supposed to envision you are Master Chief, is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
like the less
yes,
personality
absolutely.
he has and the less physical descriptors he has, that could be you, 12-year-old David.
But that makes sense from a gameplay perspective. From a video game, that makks all the sense.
It makes sense for like the Twilight books too, just because you're supposed to be Bella. You're the one who's getting romanced by Edward, and that's
You're the
appeal.
stand-in, essentially.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the books don't really operate on that, but the games still have a fair amount of that.
Okay.
So yeah, I agree, Danny. Like, hopefully they stick to this path. It's interesting. I think every long-term Halo fan has been like, when are the precursors going to show back up? And I think some people were like, oh, well, the Endless, why are they introducing this random new thing when we care about all this stuff? But if the precursor behind it, then that offers some more intriguing story stuff. And we'll just have to see if that's where it goes. I think the advantage of this as a direction is that it's so inscrutable for people who aren't lore fans. I don't think they can get upset about it and cause 343 Industries to backtrack, but we will see. Yeah. Any last thoughts? Any more questions?
I don't have the forest, so I can only see this one tree. So I was trying to dissect the tree, and it was basically, I can't think of like the quippy term for it, but it was not a great use of my time. But the overall story, like I saw themes and stuff in other stories, and I found the story itself interesting. The exposition became too much at some points, and then there were too many characters. I agree, especially with the alien names and the random apostrophes. But overall, when you got to the heart of the story, I liked it.
Wait, so would you read another book?
I would read another book with you so you could explain things and give me exposition that the books are lacking.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you've ever read the Princess Diaries book. It's different from the movie in that it's an abridged version. So I would do kind of something like that with you.
Okay.
Not the Princess Diaries, I'm sorry.
Princess Bride?
The Princess Bride.
If you're going to get, if you're going to waste someone's time with another Halo novel, I think better prepping beforehand. Yeah, like something like may go down better. Like this, just based on the blurb and knowing the context of this novel, would I suggest that this novel be the first entry for anyone new to the series to get in? Hell no.
But now we can wholeheartedly say to anyone listening, don't do this. Learn from my mistakes. And nothing ventured, nothing gained. This is a learning lesson for us all.
Because my partner, she's played the games a wee bit, I was actually going to play through Halo Infinite with her on co-op, and guess what? That never happened because FIFA 3 suck arse. Sorry, but they do. Give me my damn co-op. And I'm saving her first Halo novel to be a good one. She's not a big sci-fi fan, so the Forerunner trilogy wasn't good. And I'm still waiting for a good Halo book where I'm sitting to myself and thinking, geez, this is great. This is a good entry point. Obviously, there's going to be some baggage, but this is a good one, and this is not it. I'm still waiting for that book. I love to sit down and chat with my SO about this shit, but I haven't found a book that I would say is worthy enough of bringing in someone new. So I'm sorry that this was your first book. I'm so sorry. My God.
No, it's fine. I was very gung-ho researching it at the beginning, but, life gets in the way.
Yes. You need to have time to read it and have Halopedia up and the other thing, so you can just look it up.
I would definitely appreciate your input more in future on future stuff. Like I think you've got an interesting perspective that could lend itself well to our discussions here.
Oh, just wait till next time.
This was it.
Wait till next time when I have Phonics Corner and why the spaghetti cannot make certain sounds.
Okay, we should debate. So, I made the mistake of mentioning something that wasn't in this book and was in the Kilo 5 trilogy, which to many people is maligned because it has a lot of the alien Sangheili all using human expressions among things, as the humans say.
Yes.
Comes up a lot.
As the humans say.
But the thing that I specifically mentioned was in that book, they say that the elites can't really say P sounds because they mention there's a human character, Phillips, and they're always referring to him as Phyllis. And then this led into
Phyllis, yes.
The following comment.
I teach phonics, so I have thoughts on that. So the P sound isn't P or P, it's P. You push your lips together and you express air. It is the same exact movement as the B sound, but that's voiced. So if they can't make the P sound, then they also can't make the B sound. But then David said something else, is that it's because they don't have lips or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, lips actually play a big part in human voiced language because you use your teeth and your lips to make not an insignificant amount of letter sounds. A lot of them you don't need lips, like any vowel sound. A, E, I, A, E, I, O, U. Your mouth never closes. But P, B, M, F. So really, they couldn't even say Phillips. They'd have to go illy. That's my thing, is that if you're going to arbitrarily say that an alien species can't say a letter sound, you need to do your research on what letter sounds they also can't say. And maybe, don't come at me.
So yes, Karen Travis was even more horrible than we realized. Also, the best part about this is you have not seen a picture of what the Sangheili look like, right?
No, I have. They're on the front cover, right?
Yes,
Kygon
this is true.
That
is.
Yeah, but that's covered in armor,
but it's covering
and striking a pose.
Yeah.
That they're called split jaws because they've got 4 independent things. So
but his teeth can't reach whatever lip part, so he still couldn't make a f sound.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they have
sound.
no lip parts.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they have no lip parts in their mandibles.
So basically,
try to make the v or the f sound without your teeth touching your lips.
Yeah. Basically, the whole idea that the Arbiter speak English is apparently impossible.
It is.
Yeah. So
they would have to come up with some universal sign language.
I think I might appreciate an accurate speech from the Arbiter. Maybe just a line from a cutscene, but given phonetically, like realistically, like how it would actually be pronounced without those components. Like how would a Sangheili actually sound like if they were trying to just word for word copy human speech?
I mean, I don't know how the mandibles function or even what their own language sounds like, and I don't know that. I mean, and the video games, has their language been produced to make sounds?
I think in one video game they basically gave them space Japanese.
Okay, because it looks like with the mandibles they could make clacking sounds, and clacking, you can make a language out of that. It's just what's most, I wouldn't say what's most natural, because there's sounds in Italian and And in Eastern languages that we don't use, and it's harder for English speakers to isolate like the GLI sound in Italian or the NG sound in Thai, Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese.
I don't think they use much clicking and clacking when it comes to whenever you hear their
They mentioned that they clack their mandibles as like kind of like, I think Troy Denning's doing like a teeth sucking thing that some cultures do.
like a gesture, yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't sound like it's supposed to be part of their normal speech.
But you would have to, I think, talk to a speech therapist or, I don't know, someone who's familiar with human species, or not animal species that use mandibles instead of jaws to produce sounds.
Well, like, so they mentioned that they can combine their bottom and like hold them together, so they're more like a traditional jaw. But then I think the issue is they still have an open space down here, so they couldn't.
Can they retract their mandibles to like for their teeth to bite down on, or?
I think that gets into the thing that I don't think there's any way they could normally eat things without them falling out too.
Yeah. How do they chew? How do they chew with such a man?
I think there's actually, I have to see if I can find it. There was Uberfoop or someone on the halo.bungie.org forums tried to explain how it was possible they could eat. And basically they would just kind of have to sort of force things down. And
what do they eat? Are they omnivores, carnivores?
Oh, they're definitely omnivores. Like they definitely eat vegetables and meats.
Yeah, because they have a space grain that the evil humans were trying to poison at one point.
That was a plot point that went nowhere.
Can they use their mandibles to like keep the food in while they chew and digest?
You don't really see them ever being able to like wrap it, like tongue curl or something. So probably not.
We have yet to get a cutscene with a Sangheili eating just random snacks. We haven't seen that yet.
Well, it could be also just like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, where they just make a huge mess, but something gets down.
Yeah, we have not seen them eating. We have only seen a very drunk Sangheili throw up.
See, I just think of the thing from Stranger Things. It has that split jaw bullshit. It's like, it looks scary, but it's not practical. That thing doesn't eat food and they use a knife and fork. You know what I mean? And
It looks scary, but it's not
designed
practical.
to eat. Yeah. I think the Sangheili weren't designed.
Well, that's what we call the rule of cool.
Yes.
That's why everyone runs around with swords in science fiction, because it looks cool. All right. That concludes Phonics Corner.
Yes. Remember, kids, don't just arbitrarily say an alien species can't make a sound unless you've tried every sound.
Lessons that
I love the sneaky use of arbitrarily there. That was very subtle.
Well, you won't believe how often that advice will come in handy. Just don't arbitrarily come up with sounds alien races can't make. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up, unless anyone has anything else to add.
I think at one point I said kapuke instead of seppuke. I do know that those are two different things.
Okay.
I've learned that Sangheilis can't wolf whistle, so thanks.
Well known. All right, that wraps up for this show today. Show notes and links for this episode, as well as articles and more, can be found on our website, forwardtodown.com. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes or Spotify. Check out our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/forwardtodawn, or follow us on the platform formerly known as Twitter for updates on all our content by following the handle @forwarddawn. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.